Okay, so like I said earlier, just welcome everybody for joining us for this opening act. We're very delighted and honoured and privileged to be your opening trio for this first ever Maths Festival hosted by Pearson. Nicola Whiston, you may have heard on our first podcast with the right angle. So we welcome Nicola Whiston this afternoon and Rhiannon Rainbow. They'll introduce themselves properly in a while, but we are very excited that you're all able to join us for this insightful look into life post-COVID. It's not post yet. We're still suffering. We're still dealing with it. And of course, Nicola and Rhiannon will talk to us about their experiences, but definitely another year of turbulent lockdowns and bubbles popping, and obviously more bubbles popping at the moment. Before we introduce ourselves properly, though, I'd like to share just a couple of housekeeping items so that we can interact with each other really well this afternoon, as you're all using the chat brilliantly already. So do feel free, make sure you've got your voice to share your experiences and your thoughts, to engage with each other about those thoughts and experiences. But if you've got any specific questions for Rhiannon or Nicola or myself, then use the Q&A. We can have those direct to us, and when prompted, we'll have a look at specific questions throughout the session. We believe that maths should be engaging and accessible for everybody, for all learners. So our aim over the course of this festival is to allow us all to come together as a maths teaching community to share some amazing ideas and stories on how to engage your learners, and especially how we can amplify teaching and learning experience and empower all of you that's involved in the maths education, teachers, learners, families and communities. So that's why we've put on this free conference to focus driving forward this conversation, from reflecting upon recent changes in education and sharing, of course, best practice to what the future of maths education could look like. So together with all of you, fellow educators, industry experts, our conversation will drive how we can help schools and colleges and learners and families to make the most of maths education now and in the future. So to ensure that many of you can benefit from our discussion, we are recording the session and the other sessions throughout the week. However, obviously, we hope that you can enjoy them live and contribute to those discussions and pose your questions. You can be part of the conversation on social media. We've seen many of that activity today already, using the hashtag Pearson Maths Fest 21. There's lots of mini competitions, nominating your colleagues as maths champions, and by answering the polls that we'll see that we'll put out on Pearson Schools and the Maths Emporium. So please do get involved. We have already had some amazing nominations, and I'll have some lovely shout outs to some of you this afternoon as we go through the session. So firstly, some of you may or may not know who I am. I am Nicola Woodford-Smith. I am the subject partner for maths here at Pearson. I've been a teacher across all key stages for about 13 years, but only recently left the classroom at Christmas. So I know exactly what it's been like over the past year, teaching remotely and trying to get myself through a pandemic. So I empathise with all of you. As I said, I'm delighted to be joined by Nicola Whiston and Rhiannon Rainbow. And I think, Nicola, we'll get you to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Nicola Whiston, so I am a maths teacher. I've been teaching for about 10 years now. So I worked for Ormiston Academies Trust, and I've worked at 3 schools across our trust, kind of going from NQT to Key Stage Lead to Head of Department, and now I'm assistant principal at this one. But I am all things maths all the time and absolutely love it. But interestingly as well, as an assistant principal here, my responsibilities include the sort of blended learning, which is a whole COVID related world, isn't it? So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Rhiannon.
Hi, my name is Rhiannon Rainbow and I am the School Improvement Lead Maths for the Greenshaw Learning Trust. So that's a new role that I started this September. So like you, Nick, it's the first time ever I've been without a class, and that's been since September itself. And it's quite strange not being assigned to a school and having students that I'm directly responsible for anymore. But instead I'm working across our whole trust of schools instead. And just like Nicola as well, I've been involved a little bit more in the online provision for our students, in sort of producing and coordinating the asynchronous pre-recorded lessons that we did for our students. My background, I graduated about 18 years ago. I did a primary, and I've been teaching ever since. I did a primary maths early years degree and then went straight into secondary. So I've actually taught from early years all the way through to Key Stage 5, although my husband says that my primary experience doesn't count because it was such a long time ago. It just means I have a slightly different perspective on things. And it really helps with working with other partners as well. So thank you so much for having me on the panel, and I hope I'll be able to help even just a little today.
Yeah, and I think it does certainly count. And I know Kate Williams, who's on the call, she was primary trained and she's taught through the key stages, so she'll definitely agree that it does count, and it does give you a great insight into the students that's coming, you know, through to you. So if some of you may have or may not have listened to the Right Angle podcast that I mentioned earlier with Nicola and I, and we were in the middle of, I want to say lockdown 3, Nick, but I kind of forgotten at what point. There's so many lockdowns and local lockdowns and things, but we were right in the thick of it again. It was not a very nice time for everyone teaching or trying to blend their deliveries. And together we discussed a lot of themes and issues that were taking place across the pandemic. And, you know, along with Rhiannon, we thought that now would be the perfect time as the academic year starts to kind of draw itself to a close and we look ahead to the next year, but perfect opportunity to talk about those themes again, revisit. Are they the same problems? Are there new problems? You know, was it what we thought life would be like back in school, you know, during lockdown? Did we think it would all be, you know, having a sense of returning to normality, or is there still work to be done? So let's kick off this first section. Let's talk about how you both are, how the students are, how the staff are, what you've found to be the biggest impact affecting learning life since returning. What have been your biggest challenges, and were they expected? So Nicola, we'll open up to you first.
So I am very much still teaching in the classrooms each day. I would say we are exhausted, and I think a lot of teachers feel exactly the same as me, and just ready for the summer and to stop the Sunday afternoon email announcement to all staff of, we have another bubble, can we all revert to remote learning tomorrow? But that aside, I would say the biggest thing we've come across as a school here, that is the COVID impact, I think, has been behaviour in our academy and in our classroom. And you can't hear me, hopefully if you can hear me, that it's the behaviour really. That was the unexpected thing. I think we knew they would come back a little bit unsettled, but naively I thought they'd be excited, the kids, to come back to school. So even since September and then after January, behaviour's been a bit of a battle. And then I think getting used to being in a classroom again and teaching and getting responses from people at the same time. And then, do you know, that type of side of it has been tricky, getting back into the swing of that with the students and doing that well.
How about you, Rhiannon? How's behaviour been for you? Has it been a similar struggle?
Yeah, I think I'd use a broader term than that as well. I think it's just generally routines, and routines within that for me, professionally, for my children, because I got 3 different children, 3 different phases of education, all at 3 different schools. And for the schools I work with, and when I see the students, it's the routines, it's those set pieces that we have, the high expectations and aspirations, and making sure that we've got our consistent routines in place. Students know what it is they need to do, and I think it's really tricky when that bar keeps changing all the time, and not being changed by us, but being changed by the scenario or the situation that we find ourselves in. So we've got bubbles going home yet again. Are we all in school? Are we all at home? Are we blended? Are some people having to homeschool their own children? Have we got children at home who've got to share devices? Homework expectations have all changed. And I think we didn't appreciate, or I didn't appreciate enough of how it was. I got so used to being at home with all my children, working at home, and then suddenly back in school again for everybody. and it's a very different kind of routine. You can't control your own workflow. You have to focus a lot more. And I think it's been tough for a lot of people, actually, especially, you know, students need routines, set pieces, so they know what to expect and they can focus on the learning for the lesson. And if that's changing all the time, it's just so disrupted. So I would absolutely agree that, you know, behavior has been tricky, but I think it's all sorts of behaviors that are coming to the floor, and we just keep having to reset all the time. And that is exhausting.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I was going to ask the question that you answered before I asked it as the thought entered my mind about, it's that constant changing situation, isn't it? It's not because they've all come back in and we're all back to normal and COVID has all gone away and we can start to settle again. Like you say, you know, the bubbles are popping again. People are going home again, and it's just unsettling. Students like to feel safe, secure. Once they're in that kind of environment, then they're ready to learn. And I think you're right, this constant changing situation is not going to be great for their mindsets, and the disruption for you guys as well. I know that we had a problem when we were trying to catch up in a meeting, and you've got staff that are having to isolate, and that's changing your school day, and it's putting the stresses and the pressures on all of you as well. So it's not easy for you guys at the front of it. I know we'll talk about what's coming next, but can you think of, I don't know, a year group that's potentially giving you a problem? Do you think there's any reasons behind that, Nick? Is there a particular year group for you that's...
Yeah, I mean, every school has that one tricky year group, don't they, that were tricky before and they'll be tricky after. So for us, it's year 9, and I think from a lot of feedback across the board, the sort of middle years were tricky. But what I would say is that some of our trickiest students have performed the best with remote learning. So it seems like it's not that they don't want to learn, it's just that they struggle. It's kind of highlighted that they struggle socially in school to manage themselves and to manage it. And that's a bit of an achievement for some of them, that when they have been off and done well, when they come back, it's not always our worst ones. It's the sort of middle of do you know those kids that kind of just coast through and then are involved in everything? They just kind of get by online, but the ones that really stood out really do struggle in school, but did well online, which was really good for us.
That's good. Rhiannon,
struggled most.
Yeah, I think historically we've always struggled, no matter what school I've taught at. Year 9, they're kind of in the middle. They've got, it's that lack of responsibility yet. They don't feel the urgency of the GCSEs yet. They feel a little bit more grown up than year 7 and year 8. So I think it's a classic year, isn't it? Would you agree, Rhiannon? Would you think it's that middle, or are you feeling it in other years?
I think it depends on the lens at which you look through it. Every one of the year groups has been affected or impacted in some way. And depending at different points or different things that we're looking at, we can see different ways that they've been affected. I think generally it's those students who find it really hard to monitor their own work ethic and keep going, because they might be lacking confidence, and that teacher asking them questions in the room to prompt them and keep them going and motivate them and show them that care and support them to do that. I think that's a key group of students across all the year groups. You know, a slight anecdote, my son's learning to play the saxophone. He's only around grade 3, but he's 12. So for him to try and practice, it's really hard because he's so near the novice end of the spectrum. My daughter has just done her grade 8 flute. For her to practice, it's easier because she knows more about what it is, or what it should sound like, what it is she should be able to do. She's able to cope with more advanced things. She's further along the expert spectrum. So I think it's affecting different students in different ways, but the nearer they are the novice end, the harder it is to do it on your own.
I think you're right, and I think it's that the unsure. We've all seen those learners in the classroom that are just picking up those new skills or new topics, and they just need that reassurance. Oh, can you just check. You don't get that in virtual learning. You know, if you're, you know, the days when you were allowed to walk around the classroom, I found that really hard when COVID first kind of took hold of the teaching space, and you can't, you know, you couldn't get to a child. You just had to, you know, could you come to the front, leave your book, go and sit down, I'll check your book, and then I'll bring it. Oh, it's just, I like that fluidity of walking around and just looking over their shoulder, and, you know, don't forget your decimal point there and your minus sign. You can instantly eliminate so many misconceptions and so many doubts in their minds on new topics by that style of learning. And I think if this continues, it's going to take a long time to be able to develop those sorts of resilience in, well, that sort of resilience in students, but also how else do we develop the technology that allows the students to have that space to get those checks on. It just baffles me on how we can go through that. I just want to, before we start talking about what we're going to do next, I said we had some amazing shout outs from some of you already, and I won't embarrass you completely, but hopefully your colleagues will be able to give you a little nudge or an email after this. But just a couple that we've had through today on socials already. Katie has nominated Linda. She just thinks she's a maths champion because she just champions maths for everybody, setting up interventions for Key Stage 3 students whilst working with all these restrictions, managing the delivery of the National Tutor Programme for their most at need, and for dual delivering further maths at the drop of a hat and jumping through hoops to ensure the opportunity was there for everybody. So well done. Congratulations, Linda, on that nomination. And Amalia has nominated Melissa for simply for, I say simply, but it's just inspirational, for inspiring your students to just do their best throughout the year, but especially whilst representing the school in several maths competitions. I mean, that's a feat in itself for continuing to do that. So congratulations, Melissa, on that nomination. If you have any questions for Nicola or Rhiannon, particularly on the topics we've discussed so far, we've got Selvin, what is the route going forward? We're just about to talk about that, Selvin. So any other questions, please feel free to pop those in the Q&A. We've just had another one come through.
A couple there about AFL as well, how we use that in maths, but I kind of just replied to one. I did find as a maths department we were really lucky in comparison to other departments, because we've got amazing things like Dr. Frost Maths and Hegarty Maths, haven't we? And I don't know if you've got Key Stage 3, learning by questions is incredible for students with SEND as well. So there's loads of virtual platforms out there that allowed us to assess almost easier than the written subjects, I think, which is the first time I think I've ever been able to say that for any scenario, because normally maths is the hardest, isn't it? But because it's hard to think, is it Barris was saying he used a variety of questioning, but when you have a class and they don't want to answer anyway, so you've just got a load of blank screen hoping they're doing the work you're saying, these were the best ones for us. And I think we have massively changed the way we taught our remote learning. And even now we've got a couple of year groups out, or chunks of them. Yeah, we've been a huge user of Hegarty as well, Rhiannon, but actually Dr. Frost became more useful, user-friendly for us because of the instant feedback during the live games, and the fact you could use the key skills and you could see on the tracker where the students were question by question with the same question, rather than Hegarty where it auto-filled different numbers, which was hard to help a class with, isn't it? Brilliant.
We've got Dr. Frost on one of the sessions across the festival. I think he's up on Thursday with a couple of other experts and panelists. So if any of you that are here this afternoon want to listen more to Dr. Frost, then do sign up for that session. So as we move forward, obviously all of these challenges, past challenges over the past year, dealing with the ripple effect of what students are having to deal with and presenting these behaviours that are challenging and then current challenging, what does the next academic year look like? What are the key changes that you are implementing as leaders, as school leaders? Either is it curriculum? Is your focus whole school CPD? Is it behaviour management? What's the plan? So let's hear from you guys as well in the chat. Is there anything that you guys as schools or multi-academy trusts that you are changing, that, you know, it's not a normal September, and of course last September wasn't a normal September, but what are you guys doing that you're hoping to get the next academic year off to a good start? Rhiannon, what's happening for you guys? What are you up to?
So on the whole, since we've returned from the last lockdown, a lot of our schools and departments have mainly been focused on checking through what was previously taught during lockdown, to making sure that students are more secure on that, and we're not assuming that just because we've covered it or we've issued those lessons that they understand it and they're as confident in it as maybe as if it was taught in a normal face-to-face lesson. So that's actually what a lot of the summer term has been on, because generally our autumn and spring term is heavily weighted with number, algebra, ratio and proportion, and we know how transferable each of those topics are to other aspects. And we were hoping to use the assessments at the end of the year to try and help support and indicate to what effect we might adjust the curriculum slightly for next year. That might be to look at using sort of a question level analysis to highlight areas where students aren't as confident as we might have expected. But those plans, as we know, are already being scuppered because we've got more bubbles being sent home. So one of our big raising standard strategies for that we often put in place actually is really helpful, is we do a big assessment at the end of year 10, and instead of continuing with a scheme of work and assuming that they're comfortable and confident with the previous skills and knowledge that they've been taught, we have a reactive scheme of work. So we look at the higher leverage topics and making sure that they're more confident in those before doing the more advanced ones on the exam specification. We've got one school at which they will not have year 10 back in now this year because their bubbles burst and it's been sent home. So all of that time, all of those energy and those plans, they are still ever changing, but we're just going to defer it, and we're going to do it when they do come back in, and just keep turning that wheel and doing the best we can. So I think we are not going to have any big significant changes to the curriculum, because that's a landscape. We don't want to change too many variables. We know that, but what we are going to do is tweak and adapt and inform how much time we're spending on different things and how we prioritize things as we go, and how we can creatively use retrieval practice too.
I think you're right about the curriculum, and Nick and I spoke about this in the podcast, that it's really important to make sure that it's almost like business as usual. You don't want to create a sense of panic for students, and they think that, you know, you're just doing an emergency curriculum or that they're lost learning. I remember Nicola and I saying before that you don't want to have those students come back as well and think anything about catch up. You're going to have students that have done everything that has been asked of them. They've attended every online lesson in its full capacity and they've tried their very best. So coming back into school, into live learning, and having teachers say, oh, we've got some catching up to do, that's going to be really confusing for them. If in their mind they've done everything that they've been asked to do, why would they have an essence of any catch up? What's missing? What have they not done that they should have done? So I think it's a definite it's a tricky one, isn't it? I'm seeing the chat kind of rolling through there. I'll have a read of the comments in a minute about whether people are attending to the curriculum, the models. Nick, I remember you mentioned before, is it kind of more about CPD and teacher confidence and making sure that they feel better about the delivery?
Yeah, so we're kind of taking a different approach here, and our whole school CPD needs re-looking at and is being re-looked at in September. So I think one big thing that has kind of struggled this year with the whole routines and everything is kind of the pedagogy, and we spent a lot of time at the start of lockdown 1, so March 2020, rewriting our schemes, because as a school we changed from a 2-year to a 3-year key stage 3. So there was a load of time for admin and, well, loads of time. Do you know, people were at home and not in school writing schemes, and we've got a kind of school full of amazing intent statements now and intended curriculums, but actually the implementation of them has been virtually impossible this year. And alongside that, what we had, like a lot of other schools will have, is we had a set of NQTs last year who are now RQTs and couldn't manage, you know, they've missed out a load of training, haven't we? We've got trainees that are now teachers that missed out on, they've basically probably put a year together. September has got a load of, we've got, you know, 12 early careers teachers in our academy next year who again have just missed out on a lot of experience. So I think our priority is, as a school now, just refocusing on the pedagogy, but we're going to do this across different career stages, because some staff have a good toolkit to do this, don't they, and an established one, and they are able to come back in and revert to what they know, whereas we probably have 3 years worth of teachers now that are, they didn't get to build that toolkit, do they, and all they have learnt is about, well, they'll probably be really good at teaching remotely and can find all the aspects of that, but within the classroom they still need to work on their skills for behaviour management and routines, and like somebody said earlier, entrance and exits and live feedback and all this sort of stuff. So that's where we're going as an academy, working on the staff, and we're hoping that kind of high quality teaching first will help the students to make progress rather than focusing too much on what they've missed, because like I said, Nick, not all the kids have missed things, have they?
No, absolutely. And I think it really does build more resilience as a teacher. And I think, in my opinion, makes you an outstanding teacher if not only are you trying to deliver if you think about everything you were trying to achieve before this happened, but trying to add all of those considerations to what you're trying to achieve now, people at home, blended, digital, every other challenge that is coming your way. I think hats off and credit to every one of you that's continuing to do that, because it really does take a lot of effort and thought into delivering it right. I want to pick up on that the NQT point there, Nick. You're right. We think about, you know, the students that I left behind, the year sevens have not, you know, they've not really had a good real secondary experience, in my opinion. The year eights are going to struggle, and then that's going to affect the new year sevens coming in. So you're right, it's affected 3 academic years, and then we need to look at that for the early career teachers. And I think, as you know, as Pearson, we've put together as the maths team, we've got a session of, or 8 sessions to help with those CPD gaps that may not have been able to have taken place. And I'll put a link in the chat a bit later for anyone that wants to either look at it themselves or share it with their NQTs in their department. But it's just 8 separate sessions. We've run a couple, but they start again in September and October and into November, I believe. But just how to track progress, how to present, you know, behaviour management for an NQT, you know, those real basics that could have just been eliminated from their normal CPD programme because of the situation they've found themselves in. We've got lots of people adding into the chat. Just a request, there's some of your points are incredible. Do make sure that you check the all panelists and attendees if you'd like everyone else to see your comments. Otherwise it will just be the 3 of us that get to see them if you click all panelists. Lots of input from people there on the different resources they've used, and of course Gareth was saying about colleges. Don't forget to mention colleges, and we've got a comment there, people working in the medical education service. Thank you, Syra, she's put the course link in. But yeah, just it's not just schools, you know, what we would see as your kind of 11 to 18 schools. There are so many education provisions out there that's finding this challenging. So it's important that we as your exam board, as an education company, we try and allow you to have your say and try and get to talk to each other and share these thoughts. Just before we look at the final topic, I'm conscious that we've got about 15 minutes before we open up for a final kind of Q&A, but another shout out session for a couple more people who have been nominated by their colleagues for being it's #MathChampions if you want to nominate any of your colleagues via @Pearson Schools, or you can nominate using us at Emporium Maths. Katie has nominated 2 of her colleagues. Suzanne is a fantastic teacher, always looking for ways to improve her subject knowledge and adapt her lessons to allow her pupils to be the best they can be. She's also a brilliant form tutor, and obviously the role of a form tutor over the past couple of years has been kind of paramount. Suzanne naturally mentors and coaches others within the department as well, and is always willing to share resources. So an incredible nomination there, Suzanne. And Katie's also nominated her colleague Aaron. Aaron is passionate and enthusiastic about maths and is keen to share this with his pupils and get them excited. Aaron, I love your enthusiasm. He has a keen interest in research methods that can drive pupil progress. And again, he offers support to all of his colleagues in the department and volunteers for T&L video jobs. I think I might need his contact details. We like people that record videos for us as well. So yeah, congratulations, Suzanne and Aaron, on those nominations. I'm just going to have one quick check in the Q&A. I think the chat is where it's happening at the minute. So finally, for us, I think it's important to allow a space, as I said, for relative open discussion here about what the next year has in store for us, and working specifically in the GCSE maths team, and working alongside the A-level team, that we're keeping an eye on all things social media or outlets and discussions via all sorts of platforms about summer 2022. Let's have a talk about my opinion, I'd like an exam, please. I really would like an exam to just have a bit of a reset allowance, a bit of a, where are we now? I think it's important to have that element of measure. But I also completely understand how we could have, students have demonstrated maybe better progress without the stresses of exams. They like the fluidity of being able to demonstrate their ability to their teachers rather than the pressures of an exam. So there have already been articles that I'm sure many of you have read in the media about government conversations taking place and assessments for next year. So let's talk about the potential third year being affected by COVID. I think it could be a busy time for the chat box, but we're very happy for you to share your ideas in the chat, and don't forget to send your questions in. Nicola, what do you think? Summer 2022, what's going to happen? Or what would you like to happen?
I'm really conflicted in myself. Some days I'm like, what I would like to happen is I would just like the kids to be able to sit their exams again, to be honest. And that is a bit, I don't know, cut and dry, I suppose, but I do just like exam season, that's how it's done. And especially in maths, I like that's how it's done. I just feel like that's the fairest way, and that because they all get marked and nobody knows what's coming up, that's the thing, it's the not knowing what you're going to sit, so you have to teach everything. I believe we did it well as a school, as part of a bigger trust this year, and actually our kids still did exams. The only kind of adjustment we made for them was that we told them the revision list, and luckily we obviously use Pearson, and we had the secure Mark 6, which meant as hard as they tried, they could not hack into that paper through anything, which worked really well for us, and we did all 3 papers. And I think the hardest thing for us this year, and if without an exam, is choosing tiers. We were kind of committed to the tiers that our students were taking, because that's what we'd intended them to be at Christmas. And we all know, as experienced curriculum leaders or head of departments, some people still change them. We've done last minute changes when we've it's not great, is it, to do it, but you change a lot later than we would have done. So that this year, I think, has been a bit tricky. But yeah, I just hope, it's the fairness. I just don't know if September is anything like now, where the kids are in and out, aren't they? The kids are in and out more so, then it can't be fair, can it? But I think that all depends what's going to happen if isolation still exists in 2 weeks' time, really. But if the kids are in school, then I would like an exam to be the 2022 outcome.
I think you'll see in the chat when you get a second to read through it that it is very mixed, and I completely, I can't disagree with anybody's thoughts, because I think, you know, that some people saying I prefer to have an exam. Caroline saying not all learners do well in exam, which is a point that I just raised. And, you know, there's another comment about just having the same exam for everybody, being marked by the exam board. The exam boards are definitely the fairer approach. Again, I can see, you know, that definitely does take that pressure off of staff, and I'm sure there'll be some more comments coming through in a minute about just how the tag process was for everybody, how they found it. I'm still looking at meeting notes and stuff from my previous colleagues at the previous school about how they had to manage it all, and especially trying to ensure that you're being consistent across everybody. There's questions about being reduced curricula. Do you think that's on the table, about reducing the content for summer 2022? I know the plan in January for this year was the advance notice, so you would have maybe content or the formula page, or do you think that's something that is worth doing for the next year, or do you think it should go back to where it was before and let's move on? What do you think, Rhiannon?
When we thought the initial plan was for this year, give preset topics and we would have time to prepare. So yes, we would cover a broader perspective of maths in our normal curriculum in education. When it came to that final bit of preparation for students, where we're going through routines and exam practice, that we were going to be given like a refined list of topics, I'd have been really happy with that, because we'd have known what we were working with and we'd have covered lots of other things anyway. We were just being told the ones that actually don't focus on for this last bit. For me, that would have been far better than what we ended up with, because in my opinion, exams are a huge leveler. They create opportunity and they break down barriers for so many students. And I suppose the difficulty is no single teacher or school gets a broad enough sample to be able to really ensure that they've got enough to secure those grades for those students that year, because our grades in maths are dependent on how the students have performed against their peers. It's not you tick these, it's not done in a way that if you do this year and this next year, you will get exactly the same grade on both years. It changes. It's an ever-changing landscape. So it means that all our students have to do, and that sounds like I'm underselling it, and I don't mean it that way, but our students just have to perform the best they can in their race on that day. They're not trying to beat the world record from last year. They're just performing in their race on that day. And exams give an opportunity to do that. And I completely understand as well anxiety and how students will be unsettled by exams. But I think if we know what to prepare our students for, we can help with those set pieces. We can do as much as we can about routines so they know what to expect at each stage. And whilst that doesn't eliminate anxiety and worries and those who do find it difficult to perform as well as they could do, it certainly does break down a number of those barriers. So for me, it's please just bring back exams.
The only thing I would say on the exams that we did this year, like we had, that list, we had a list because we knew what was coming up. But what we have done is a real injustice I feel really awful for everyone that's going to have to teach A-level next year, basically, because we've taught them really well the topics that we know are coming up on the exam that we set. And because I knew, the equation of a circle wasn't on this paper, that my students don't have didn't give them the same depth of questioning as I would have given them, you know, or investigation or things linked to other things, because I knew it wasn't going to link to it. And that's awful to say as a teacher, but I think as however long there will be a list, so even if the idea was this year we'll give a prepared list of what's coming up, the problem is you don't prepare them the most able, do you, for moving on to the next step and being prepared for everything. So some maths things you teach and are never taught, but why is that? That's okay, isn't it, that you teach topics that never come up on the test? In a year it's unknown, but it seemed in a year when you are going to tell them it's not okay to do that. So I think that's been the one. And the most worst thing about the tags was how much it took year 11 teachers to mark after. You know, you choose to do that as an examiner, don't you, because you know the reward is you'll be being paid for it. But as a teacher, that was really, it was like it took a lot of determination to mark 3 sets of 60 papers that I had to do, on top of drilling them to get through the papers as well.
There are some really interesting points picking up on those, that, you know, those points that you both have made. Gareth is getting a bit of a reaction with the modular systems. Now, I was talking to someone about modular the other day, and my colleague Grace, I think Grace is here with us this afternoon, and we're looking at some post-16 work at the moment, which, you know, some of you may have seen us putting out our surveys and stuff. But we were talking about modular and how, I think Gareth mentions that the pre-Gove days, you know, when there was, I think it was 2381 was the spec code. That shows you how geeky I am at remembering course codes. But there was the opportunity for them to take modules and a unit at a time, and then the accumulation, you know, added towards their you know, fed into their outcome grade. Do you think we've got space for that? Would you welcome the modular GCSE approach again?
It was great. The problem with it was the resitting, wasn't it? Because at that time you could resit, so kids would be doing the modular papers from about 13 years old in some schools, weren't they? But
yeah,
that would have been a good solution to what was happening so far, isn't it? You know, yeah, it would allow more flexibility, Steve. Yeah, I agree there. I liked that system.
Yeah, you're right. The modular resit, I remember having students saying, and which one am I doing again this term? Like, have I got to resit that one? Because they could improve, couldn't they? They could, I think it was 2, they could sit it twice, I think. But maybe that's we can have a podcast about if we could have any GCSE, would we bring modular back in? I was also looking at the early, sitting early. Yeah, that's another one, about the whole kind of sitting them in January. Yeah, that was another one, wasn't it? There was more times to be able to sit them, and the resit kind of parameters have obviously changed. I like that you mentioned mock set 6, Nick. We've had a lot of teachers mention how they found those secure papers, they couldn't find them anywhere, and you'll be pleased to know that mock set 7 is in work. It's under construction at the moment to go out to go out next January. We try to release one. We promised you all that we'd release one every year, so mock set 7 will hopefully be out in January. I put a link in the chat for people that can have a look a bit later. When you were saying, Rhiannon, about the A-level teachers and, you know, that kind of stripped back approach, if you like, and Nick, you were saying not teaching the whole content. I put a link. We put together some transition to A-level videos that might help some teachers and students. I think there's about 120 different resources, videos in there for people to have a look at. Oh, yay to set 7. Yes, we like a good mock set, and it does mean that everything is nice and secure. Let's do a final shout out for a couple more maths champions. Richard nominated his colleague Chris, said that Chris not only constructed a mixed ability framework with lessons for 2 year groups, but he also designed lessons that were deliverable online. He continually kept the department informed of the plans weeks ahead, while demonstrating some of the ways that different online platforms could be used to great effect. Chris has been a hero. Well done, Chris. That's an incredible nomination by your colleague Richard, and I'm sure if anyone knows Chris, to signpost him to that digital learning. I'm sure Chris could be the champion for his school, and would have some good input for that session. Mario, final nomination kind of shout out here. Mario has nominated his colleague Joseph. Has shown many leadership qualities and has helped transform the faculty by demonstrating great lessons, implementing new policies and being helpful to all that's needed it. And quite rightly so, he's just been promoted to the post of Assistant Head of Faculty. So congratulations, Joseph. So ladies, how fast did that go? I'm trying to squeeze everything in. I knew it would be busy. But I just want to, I'll leave you to have a look at the chat just to see if there's anyone that needs any kind of responses. I'm definitely going to have a look back after we close. But just to finish, I just want to thank everybody for coming along this afternoon, to this opening session of the Maths Festival. I hope you found the conversation topics useful, hopefully a bit reassuring in some cases. I think it's definitely important to share your thoughts and experiences across these challenging times. And of course, there's only one goal, isn't there? And that's to support our students and make sure that they not only have a successful experience of their maths journey, but also an enjoyable one. So as a reminder, please use those hashtags. The Maths Champion, get nominating for your colleagues to champion those as well. And I believe there's a little mini competition and free coffee cups that we've put out on Twitter this afternoon if you get tweeting away. Some of you have asked as well earlier about the key skills at Key Stage 3 work that Kate Williams and I have helped put together to help streamline your focus over the next academic year. And we've got some very exciting escape rooms to help assess your students for those each term. If you need more information, have a look at your latest Emporium emails and on Twitter. We will continue to send out those Emporium emails bi-weekly. One has been sent out today. And of course, Mark Heslop and I will continue to sit behind Twitter at Emporium Maths. As you've seen in the chat, at the end of this session, you'll receive a very short feedback page in your browser. We would love if you could just take a minute or so to send in your responses. We would welcome those. And finally, we just want to remind you of that hashtag Pearson Maths Fest and at Pearson Schools, so get involved. But for now, from Nicola and Rhiannon and myself, we want to wish you all a very happy summer holidays and to enjoy the Maths Festival. Ladies, I'll let you say your goodbyes if you wish. Just any Twitter handles you want to share or anything like that that's upcoming that you want to share. See if people can get in touch with you. I'll let you put those in the chat, actually. I'll let you have a little wave if you want. Nick, any final words from you?
No, thanks for having me, Nick. Thanks again.
No problem. Rhiannon?
Thank you ever so much for giving me the opportunity. And thanks to everybody in the chat too. It's been great.
Brilliant. Thank you everyone again for your comments. The chat has been really insightful. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic afternoon and we will see you for the next festival sessions. Take care.